All right, so let's take a look at where we left off. If I press play here, you can see I get this kind of jagged movement with my keyboard. So let's take a look at a much smoother way of doing it, where we can use our mouse. And what we'll do is we'll essentially use the mouse's position and rotate the essentially our floor piece using the axis. So let's jump over to our blueprint. Now, if you closed your tab or you're coming back to this later like me and you forgot where to go, if you click up here, you can see there's open level blueprint here. There's also, if you hold Command Option, they'll give you more options for this. So Command and Option or Control, and it'll tell you a little bit more about it. So let's just go ahead and open this up. Here's our level blueprint, and down here you can see we have all of our stuff set up for how we move, right? So let's say we want to get the X position of our mouse. I could just hit the space bar here, or right click rather, and just start typing in mouse and then X. You can see here it says debug X. These are all of the events to check if we wanted to see the degree of our axis as debug, for testing. Or we could just get a mouse event. And remember, mouse events are just like input events or keyboard events. And what this will do, this will actually grab the input from the mouse itself on the x-axis. So let's add that. I'm going to move this a little bit down this way. And then let's right click again, type in mouse, and let's grab that Y as well. So let's type mouse Y, and I'll just grab this little guy down here. All right, so it's important to know that with these two nodes, the mouse X and mouse Y, that they actually get read every single frame, right? And so every frame that's called, it's going to check if there's any movement coming from our mouse X and mouse Y. And we can actually see this if we go out and we attach a string, a print value here, for example, which we use for a lot of debugging to check if like a node is working. So we'll use a print string here, and I could just wire right into this, my axis value. And you could see that it automatically created this conversion node, which changed it from essentially a double, which is a floating point number, to a string. And so we should be able to print that or see that on the screen. So I'm going to go ahead and compile and save that, and then I'm going to press play. And what you'll see in the corner here is as I'm moving my mouse on the x-axis or whatever, we get a little bit of value, and as I leave it, it leaves it alone. See that? As I'm moving it, it's starting to register those values. I'm moving it to the right, I'm moving it to the left. So I'm going to go ahead and hit escape there. So you can see that it's actually registering the value every single frame coming out of that. All right, so let's go ahead and delete this. And if there's a little bit of glitching between my pauses or edits, it's because I'm, again, getting used to using a Mac, and for some reason, it's not as smooth. All right, so I want to get a reference to my floor so that I can move it on the x-axis for the mouse. So I'm going to go into test bed here, make sure that my floor is selected here. Let's bring this down a little bit here. And I want to actually select it here. Make sure that you're doing it in the outliner, not just in the details panel, even though that indicates that it's selected. And then just go back inside here and then right click. And then you could see up here, create a reference for the floor. And now we have access to that. Let's bring this down a little bit. So we can go ahead and say, okay, we want to add. So we can do actor world rotation. And that's this right here. And then we can wire that in. And that'll give us the what axis do we want to work off of, right? If we have our delta rotation, we can wire it this way. Actually, another way of doing this too is with that floor selected from our scene, we can right click and do add actor world rotation. And what it'll do is it'll automatically grab that floor that's selected and it'll grab the next node. So that's kind of a trick to move a little bit quicker. All right, so I want to get access to just the x-axis here. So I'm going to right click on this and I'm going to split structure pin. And what that'll do is that'll break it into X, Y, and Z. What's nice about this is I can just wire this directly into here, and then I can wire this into the X. And if we compile and save this, now when I go into my test bed and press play, if I click inside the view, I can actually move it with my mouse. I can also use my keyboard if I want to, so it's kind of giving me two gameplay. But notice how much smoother it is because I'm actually working off of the axis versus working off of a mouse. So we get some really nice movement here. Ooh, there we go. A lot of fun. All right, let's go back to test bed. I want you to pause for a second and take a look at this. And on your own, just figure out how to wire this up for the y-axis. All right, so let's go ahead and just copy this. And I'm going to hit Command C, Command V. And same as before, just kind of wire these up. Wire this guy. And then I want this to be on Y. All right, let's go ahead and compile and save this. Now, something you're probably going to notice is that you're going to get inverse controls because this is a positive value going in, and we want to sort of multiply this by a negative number. But let me show you how that works for now. So if I press play now and I move it left and right, it feels more natural to me because I'm moving my mouse left and right. But when I move it forward, notice how it tilts downward, the part that's facing us, and then this one's tilting back. So it's pretty easy to inverse the value. So here's kind of another thing for you. If you want to, you can pause the video and try to figure out how to do that. But what we can do is just drag out a multiply node, and then the value here that we want to multiply. So the value coming out of here is going to be multiplied by something. Well, if you want to inverse a value, all you have to do is multiply it by -1. And then now if we drag and drop this in here and we compile and save this, and I press play, you can see now it moves a lot more like it should. And we get a little bit of a fun game where, we're kind of like moving this. And you could adjust the size, and we'll build like little walls and stuff. And then the goal is to get it to an end. Okay, so we've got that going on. Let's go back to our test bed, and let's see if there's a way that we can clean all of this up. Let's see if I can actually close this out so we get a little bit more room here, especially for you guys using smaller laptop screens. All right, so now there's other ways that we can kind of clean this up to make it look a little bit smoother, run a little bit better, and be a bit smoother. And if you remember before, we had let's see, was it in here? The event tick. If not, we can add it, I believe. Yeah, so we have this guy right here. And what this does is this also runs every frame. And as I mentioned before, this mouse X here, it reads input on every frame, but we can actually use this event tick to do essentially the same thing and clean this up a bit more. And all we'll need is one of these add actor world rotation. So let's set this up. So we have an event tick, again, runs every frame. It's kind of like our update method or on awake or whatever from Unity that we've been using. And I'm going to say Command C and Command V. I'm going to paste this in here. I'm going to wire this directly in here. And then we need to know, well, what is it exactly that we're going to target? Well, I want to use my floor here. So let's copy that. And then let's just wire this right in here. And then now, how do we adjust the rotation based on the mouse movement? Well, we're not going to be using this, right? I just want to grab the value itself. I don't necessarily need to grab the mouse and then move that around because we already have the mouse set up inside of Unreal. So in this alternate method, to make this a little bit cleaner, I can actually just right click and I can start typing out mouse X. And what you'll notice is at the bottom, we have mouse values versus mouse events. So if I select the mouse X, now I'm only getting the value of my mouse as I move it left and right. And the same thing here. I right click again and I want to get the Y value. So mouse and then Y. And you probably guessed what my next step is. I'm just going to borrow this here and I'm going to paste that there so that we can inverse that value. Oops, wrong side. And so I can inverse this value into the Y. And then that looks pretty good. The last thing I want to do is turn on teleport, which, as you recall, this is going to give us like true physics, right? So that you could see just whether we teleport the physics state, if physics collision is enabled, which it is on the sphere, true physics will allow the object to unchange. So like it'll sort of like, it'll update on its own. It'll run a lot smoother. So I think that looks pretty good. It's all wired up. And let's go ahead and just delete these because we have this much cleaner way of moving our ball now. And let's compile and save that. And now when I press play, you can see we still have that same stuff run smoothly, and we have a lot cleaner visual scripting. And also, even the way the ball moves, it doesn't pop as much like it was jumping before. Now, I like to, that's good for kind of programming our game. For now, I think that's pretty good. But the last thing I want to do, don't just click off the video yet, is I want to talk a little bit more about programming, right? So up at the top here, we're learning about arrays, right? And there's one other structure I want to introduce you to that is a little bit different than arrays. And actually, you know what? Let's end this video here because I think we're getting pretty long. And in the next video, I'll cover maps.